So I'm very excited to talk today about self-doubt. That's our theme for today. Uh, it's a topic that's very near to my heart. I have experienced it and practiced with it my entire life in many forms, right? Because self-doubt can come up as imposter syndrome. Self-doubt can come up as just low self-esteem. Self-doubt can come up as like hesitancy, like taking a half step when a full step is what's called for, and on and on. It's something of an umbrella term. When I got out of the monastery, so I spent about 6 years living in monasteries and practice centers and was a monk for a time. And when I came back to lay life and grew my hair back out again and stopped wearing long robes and started calling myself Dave again, I landed at this amazing place in New Hampshire. It's called the Morning Sun Mindfulness Center. And it's a community of mindfulness run by a couple, Michael and Fern, who were also formerly a monk and a nun in the tradition of the Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh, and who after living like that for about 10 years, they had been a couple previously, married, left monastic life, and had a bunch of kids, and opened up this center. So I thought it'd be a good idea when I disrobed to go spend some time with them. It ended up being a year. Just to learn from teachers who were that step ahead of me and who had already experienced this incredible transition that I was going to as I was returning to lay life. And they were surrounded by this, they were and are surrounded by this incredible community of practitioners, that some of whom come every weekend and some of whom live there. They're on 300 acres of woods, a half an hour from nowhere in New Hampshire, in southwest New Hampshire. And one of these very sincere practitioners, she goes by the name Ren. And Ren is a full-time resident of that practice center, retired and sold her home and built a home there on the land. She's an artist and a teacher and just a phenomenal elder. I felt very privileged just to get to spend time with her during the year that I was there. She taught me a lot. And when we very first met, she, in kind of a classic assertive / aggressive East Coast way, grilled me, I was like, who are you? And what are you doing? And how do you feel? And what's going on with your life right now, young man? Me being me, I just answered her. I'm used to that kind of conversation. I grew up in the Bronx. Not a lot of mincing words on those mean streets. And at the end of our kind of getting to know each other conversation, she paused, She just looked down at the ground. We were standing outside. And then she looked up at me and she said, wow, it's going to be so difficult and so important for you to maintain your confidence. Wow. And I had, there was so much love and truth in her statement that it knocked me off my horse, so to speak. I'll never forget it. I'll never forget it. That was years ago now. Because it was so true. There I was, standing there, pretty stripped down. Very vulnerable. I had nothing, I didn't have any home, I didn't have any job, I didn't have any money, I didn't have any possessions, I didn't have a car, I was just like a baby, starting over again. And And she was right. There was the danger, sort of like when you're walking alongside a beautiful cliff, like Half Moon Bay, in Northern California, for example. There's this tremendous beauty, but the cliff is right there all the time, right? There's also this ever-present danger. There's also the possibility like, well, if 2 or 3 things go wrong at the same time, if I take 2 or 3 steps without mindfulness, something terrible could happen. Like, that's real. The cliff is actually there. The fall is not a dark imagining. And this is how I was living for a long time. I'm starting to settle now. That was 5 years ago, I guess. 6 years ago. So I'm starting to feel, less unstable. I don't think a strong wind would blow me down right now. Thank goodness. But that's taken years. So in that moment, wow. There was a lot of truth, a lot of insight in her statement. And so each day, right, I had to make this choice. Sometimes subconsciously, but sometimes very literally. Sometimes like lying there in bed, waking up, being like, ooh, this sucks. Like, this is terrifying. I don't know how this is going to work out. I'm not exactly sure what the steps are here. and each morning I saw I had this choice, like, well, I could go down the road of really focusing on the fear, because the cliff was there. Whatever that cliff was at that time, I guess it was failure, poverty, homelessness, shame. That was there. But then if I, like, looking at the cliff, right, imagine me standing kind of looking out at the cliff and the ocean, right? If I just fell backwards, right, in the other direction, like literally fall, like not carefully step, but even with that real danger in that direction, all I had to do to find ground was to allow myself to fall backwards. Because if I fell backwards, where did I land? Right? I landed on the solid earth. The cliff is such a great example, because it's where the two meet, right? Where the fall, where the emptiness, where the dread meets solid earth. No solid earth, no cliff. And so in a lot of ways, when I left monastic life, that's what I was doing. I was just closing my eyes and letting myself fall backwards into my life. And I was trusting that the people I knew and didn't know, that my life energy, that the purity of my intentions, that the world itself was going to catch me. It was so far, not done yet, but so far in this life, and it's the scariest thing I've done yet. And I've done some scary things. I've done some scary things. All along the way, right, as that choice has unfolded, this idea of self-doubt in all of its forms has been right there. It's not, sticking with that analogy, when I fall backwards and lay there on the ground, the cliff does not disappear. The cliff is still right there. Even as I'm experiencing all the safety and solidity and embrace and unconditional loving support of the earth underneath me, the cliff is right there. The cliff is right there. And so I want to talk a little bit today about what that's felt like and what that experience is actively, not in the past tense, but is actively teaching me. The first thing is that it would be very easy to look at ourselves as human beings as fixed products. You know, our language, our system of thinking, our economy, a lot of the way all of this works, this swirling reality that we're in, is about labels and compartmentalization. When I go online and look at my bank account, like, it doesn't give me a range, right? It gives me a number, you know? And my age is a number, you know, my address is a fixed place. I don't introduce myself as like, hi, my name is sometimes Dave. But that's much closer to the truth. I've had so many names, my friends. I've had so many names. You know, I've been Dave. I've been Little Davicho to my Ecuadorian family. I've been Dahi, David in Gaelic to my Irish family. I've been Chan Troy Mintam to my Vietnamese friends when I was a monk. I've been Brother Heart, which is also translated as Brother True Sky of Radiant Heart Mind. My first name in practice in the tradition of Thich Nhat Hanh when I received the 5 mindfulness trainings was Awakening Love of the Heart. And so I have carried that as my name for years. And then when I ordained as a member of the Order of Interbeing, meaning made a lifelong commitment to study Thai as his disciple and to spread his teachings as I'm doing now, I was given the name True Precious Mindfulness. And so I carry that name as well. And on and on and on. Sergeant Kenneally. The list goes on. I probably can't even remember them all. So it would be much more accurate, much more true if I met you at a party for me to say, hi, my name is sometimes Dave. But we don't do that. We don't do that. We don't live that way. Because for some obvious reasons, right? Because it's difficult. Like, I'm really happy to know that this is a cup of black coffee with a splash of heavy whipping cream in it. And then it's not a cup full of antifreeze. Like, that label, like that distinction is important to me. It's very beneficial. I don't want to vilify it. But it's not the complete truth. It's not the complete truth. Much closer to the truth than I am Dave, right? This truth of convenience is that I am a process. I am a process. A process that I have been able to observe for the last 50 years, but that started even before that. Right? Where does my dad end and I begin? Right? If you take away my dad, I don't exist. And so he is inexorably part of my process. I look almost identically like him. He's passed away now, so I'm kind of him walking around again, you know. I have a lot of his habits. I can see now as I get older how when life situations that I got to observe him in come up, I feel and sometimes still react the way he would have. So even in my thoughts, speech, and actions, in my triple karma, as it's called in classic Buddhist thought, he's still right here. There are times when I am doing something, thinking something, and words are coming out of my mouth, and the Dave that I believe myself to be is observing, kind of like, picture me sort of in the audience, like looking at myself on the stage, and I'm like, who the hell is that? Oh my goodness, that's Dad. That's not me. And yet it is, friends. And yet it is. So what I'm hoping you're hearing, right, as I'm fleshing this out, is that part of why we experience self-doubt is because we have a fundamental misunderstanding about ourselves. Right? We have this idea that we are this fixed thing, that I'm in control, I'm making choices, and I should be doing things right. Whereas the reality is much closer to, I am this roaring wave that I have almost no control over the direction of, almost none, that started before I was born, right? How far back, we don't know. Before time is how I like to say it. And right now, that wave that has been roaring through the thousands of years of my ancestors that I'm aware of, right, is right here, right now, in the present moment, right? Spraying foam, just roaring. And that's me. That's us. That's what we are. And just in the same way, we wouldn't look at those waves and be like, why is that one going so slow? It must be lazy. Why is that one so much bigger than the other waves? It must be greedy. Right? And on and on. It doesn't make sense to apply those judgments because we are aware, we can conceive, we can understand, even in a place beneath words. When we look at the waves, we see what they really are. Right? They are the ocean. They are completely connected to everything, and they're just a process happening, right? Manifesting, raging, crashing, and receding. And we understand that that process is not this individualistic, egotistical, like, look at me, I'm the best wave ever. Right? We understand that it's a function largely of all of the causes and conditions, right? Winds in Japan cause waves here on the Pacific shore. And we understand this, but we have a very difficult time. We have a very difficult time applying that kind of broad understanding to ourselves and therefore to each other. Just like I have a difficult time introducing myself as sometimes Dave. It's so much easier because of the way our culture has taught us to think and label and rationalize. To think of ourselves in this very tiny way. But if we do that, the cliff is right there. Right? The cliff is right there. And we're being very hard on ourselves. We're being very hard on ourselves. And self-doubt is very likely to arise. It's very likely to arise. Now, if I walk into a party and put a ton of pressure on myself to be liked and to be friendly and to be happy, man, I am just setting myself up for a fall, right? I don't know what I'm walking into. We have mirror neurons. We literally have cells in our body that are listening to the mood of the other human beings around us and that are forcing us to match it. Right? We're hardwired to mirror the emotions and the thoughts of the people around us as a way to promote harmony. Right? But from back 60,000 years ago, we were running around in tribes of 150, and being out of harmony with the group meant death. Right? We relied on our tribe for survival in a way that we don't exactly now. And so if I walk into that room and I'm putting all this pressure on myself to be X, Y, or Z, I'm denying the fact that I'm a process. I don't actually get to control that. If everybody in the room is sad, I'm going to be a little bit sad. If enough people in the room are angry, I'm going to feel a little bit of anger. We are very subject to our environment. We don't have this sort of complete control that we like to imagine, that we comfort ourselves by imagining. So now let's apply this to any pursuit, right? To any action, to any goal, whatever it is. I'll use the example of myself being a mindfulness teacher. Every single thing that I have ever attempted to do, and I would imagine this is true for you too, every single thing that I am good at now, every single thing that I am expert now, I'm expert in a few things. I'm old enough and, sort of stubborn enough that I've become an expert in a few areas. And mindfulness is one of them, thank goodness. But every single one of those areas, there was a time when I sucked at it. Right? Every single one. Right? Because every single one of those things, there was a time when I was a raw beginner. There was a time when walking across this room would have been an insurmountable challenge, right? When toddler Dave would have just fallen and stumbled and cried and failed again and again and again. Why can I walk across the room effortlessly now? Simply because I continued to try. For no other reason. And I didn't get any special classes. I didn't read any manuals on walking. I just kept doing it. And the people around me understood that. They understood that. And so when I fell and I stumbled, they didn't yell at me. They didn't punish me. They didn't shame me. They just picked me up and kissed me and hugged me and set me back down on the ground and pointed me at the coffee table and walk over there. And I tried again. And this is how I imagine all of us would treat a child as they were learning anything. But again, because of our culture, our language, the way we socialize with each other as adults, the way our economy is set up, the way our political structures are set up, because of this whole thing, there comes a time in our lives where we just stop being kind to each other. As my shirt says. And to ourselves. We stop being kind to ourselves. We get this crazy idea that the way to get the person who doesn't have the ability to walk across the room is to shame them and blame them and punish them and threaten them. Right? We start to negotiate by withholding. Oh, you want this? Well, then you have to do this first. You want me to be nice to you? Well, then you have to do the things I want you to do. So let's start there, right? Self-doubt is not this unique thing that I'm producing because I'm broken or because I'm weak or because I'm afraid. Right? It's this thing that's collective that we're experiencing. Right? We're picking it up everywhere we go like a song. It gets stuck in your head. Everybody's afraid of making a mistake because we're not being kind, because we're not treating each other with unconditional, non-judgmental, curious, accepting love, because we're not being mindful. So that's part one. And I'm going to make part two brief because I want to hear from all of you. This unkind, cruel, unreasonable standard that we're holding ourselves to all the time is a double-edged sword, and it's cutting both ways. It's hurting us and it's hurting others. Because if I'm sitting at a table experiencing one of the ways self-doubt can manifest, it's called spotlight effect. It's hardwired in our brains. I can be sitting at a table imagining that everyone is looking at me and that everybody's judging me. And we're built to have that experience. Again, that was beneficial when we really did care what 150 people thought of us. When if those people thought ill of us, we would die. If I'm sitting there in all that self-judgment, right, with all those dark imaginings, I am completely disconnected from that room. I'm just imagining all those people as enemy. And so you see how the sword is cutting me. But it's impossible for me to hold that view of myself, to be that harsh, to be that exacting, to be that ready to throw myself off the cliff, right? To punish myself in that spotlight. It's impossible for me to be treating myself that way and not to be treating other people that way. I can't turn that off. Just like I can't be a jerk all day at work and then come home and be nice to my family, right? In the hypothetical. It's not possible. And so the spotlight effect that is making my life so small and so scary and so closed is also projecting out onto the people around me. It's a barrier. It's like a wall between me and real heart connection. Because if then, somebody does make a mistake, that voice, that judge, that inner critic that is just yelling at me is going to turn around and just yell at them a little bit. I'm like, oh yeah, Bob's a jerk. Oh yeah, Jane's not good at presenting, or whatever, And so there you see the sword cutting the other way. So this self-doubt is not just this unique and an individual problem. It's a collective issue, right? That degrades our ability to connect, that degrades our ability to understand, that degrades our ability to really communicate with each other, to collaborate in any way. Yesterday, I had the tremendous pleasure, I'll end with this little story. Yesterday, I had the tremendous pleasure of leading a short meditation at the beginning of a virtual, a Zoom baby shower for some dear friends that are expecting. And as I do, right? It was in the morning. It was yesterday morning. So I got up early and I spent a couple of hours practicing and calming myself down and setting my space and just getting into a place so that I could really be present for, the 3 minutes that I was going to be talking to this group of, 50 people. Some of whom I knew really, really well, and some I was meeting for the first time. Maybe 2 minutes, maybe 120 seconds before I was planning on hitting the button and actually joining the call, I knocked over this entire mug of coffee on the desk that I was about to be taking the call on. So hot coffee poured all over my keyboard, all over my desk, onto the floor, soaked my socks in coffee. So in an instant, I'm standing in front of a big, huge mess on table and floor. I literally screamed, "Disaster!" That's what came out of my mouth. Oh, God. What did I do? What could I do? I took a breath. I removed the coffee cup. I ran to the kitchen. I grabbed a few towels, and I quickly mopped things up. I changed my socks. And I sat down. Boop, and I hit the button. I didn't really have that much time to think. Well, and then a couple of minutes later, I was introduced, and I was leading this moment that was supposed to be really grounding and really calming. My nervous system was still so keyed up that when I when I lifted the bell, right, I was shaking. But the meditation was a complete success. Nobody knew what I was experiencing. Why? Because as all of that was happening, I was never saying to myself that something was wrong. Right? With the exception of my exclamation in the very beginning, right? I did have a few seconds of despair. But then I just moved on, I was just like, because I know that the point of what we're doing right now, for example, which is the exact same as what I was doing for 3 minutes with that group of people, is just being present with what is and then doing our best. Being present with what is and then doing our best. And this is how I learned how to walk. This is how I learned how to teach mindfulness. This is how I learned how to do everything I know how to do. I was present with myself, right where I was, and then I took action. And so I wasn't like performing for those people. So even as the bell was shaking in the camera, I was smiling. I was like, oh yeah, that's where I'm at right now. Like, this grounding meditation is for me too. I'm part of this party. And I need to calm down really badly. I just had a traumatizing experience. And I want to be calm and present for all the beautiful sharings that are about to take place. I didn't other myself. I didn't pretend that I was some fixed thing like Dave, mindfulness teacher, super calm, does everything correctly, never spills his coffee. Right? And I didn't put myself in that really small box. And so as a consequence, I had the power, right? I had the ability to do what needed to be done. But that's a product of 25 years. I've been training at that kind of thing for 25 years. I've been learning how to walk across that room and falling and falling and falling for 25 years. So in summary, I guess what I'm saying is self-doubt is coming from inside of this very small container that we're carrying around because we were past it, this small idea of small self. And one of the most effective ways I've found to combat it is just to realize, like, oh man, that's like a pillbox. That's this tiny little thing that I'm carrying in my pocket. I am in fact this big. No, I am huge. I am all of my ancestors. I am my niece Matilda and all the life she's going to live. I'm an endless wave. I'm an endless process. We're just infinity doing a little dance in a meat suit. We're infinity. And self-doubt does not disappear, right? I still cried out disaster in that moment, even after all these years of practice, right? I didn't say, yay! But it was just this little pillbox. It wasn't my whole experience. It wasn't this dark cloud that covered that whole moment. And just like everything we've been talking about, that takes practice. That takes practice. You're not going to like turn off this Zoom meeting and make a huge shift in how you experience self-doubt necessarily. But there is a direction to head in, and I see it as the direction from the frightened idea of the individual to the expanded idea of the collective. And if I was sitting here right now really afraid that all of you were in judgment of me, and that if I misspoke or if I did anything wrong, that you were going to shame me and blame me and talk bad about me and never come to Sangha again. God, how could I do this every Sunday? It'd be so painful. I have the opposite feeling. Like, I know that whatever happens here on this call, that every single one of you is going to practice love and compassion with it. That you're on my side. And so we're training like this in these controlled environments because that's how we want to experience. That's how I want to experience every moment. That's how I want to feel when I'm talking to the stranger in the supermarket. But that's a training. That's a training that is a bit against the stream. And so coming back full circle, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Right? The Sangha, the community, the family, is how we train this. Spending as much time as we can practicing with each other just like this. And let me tell you, 25 years in, it works. It works. And I'm to be very clear, I don't expect you to believe that. If that's not your experience yet, oh my goodness, not only do I not expect you to believe me, I don't want you to. Don't believe me. Practice. Practice it yourself. Practice it yourself. Be with yourself in that way. Be with the people closest to you in that way. Be with neutral people that way. Start treating your mail delivery person that way. Start treating the person behind your favorite deli counter that way. Start treating your neighbor who you never say hi to because you have a story in your mind that they're grumpy. Start treating them with kindness and acceptance and a recognition that they are a process. And just watch it expand. Don't take my word for it. This is not an idea. Zen is a practice. Zen is a practice. Do it. Do it. Thank you all so much for listening. Holy cow. I used up pretty much the whole hour. Normally, for those of you who are here for the first time, I think I see Rebecca. Hi, Rebecca. Welcome. Great to see you. Hi, Michelle. Normally, I try to leave 15 or even 20 minutes at the end for questions and answers. But every once in a while, this happens where talk kind of gets away from me because there's so much to say. There's so much to say. And so today was one of those days. So instead of trying to squeeze one question and answer in an insufficient amount of time, instead, let's just close with a minute of sitting together. Wow, this is a big topic, and it's very emotional. I know it is for me. So let's all just find our comfortable seat right now, and we can sit together for just the sound of one bell. And just let all of the feelings and all of the thoughts settle a bit. Body, speech, and mind in perfect oneness. we send our hearts along with the sound of this bell. May all who hear it awaken from forgetfulness and transcend the path of anxiety and of sorrow. Thank you, friends. I'm going to throw my usual text in the chat. It's just about how the Sangha is run by donation and how there's also an opportunity to become a patron of the Sangha, which is like a kind of a membership model, and that gives you access to the recordings, the full recordings of the Sangha each week. And that way you can follow along if this time isn't always convenient. Many of you I see on the call are already patrons supporting us, and thank you. Thank you. We couldn't do this. We couldn't do this without you. We couldn't do this without you. I love you, Sangha. Enjoy the rest of this beautiful day.